Welcome back to Globewise Entertainment, your go-to destination for mind-blowing movie facts, Hollywood secrets, and the stories they tried to keep hidden. Today we're diving into 17 controversial movies that were banned in America, films so bold, so shocking they were yanked from theaters, slammed by censors, and in some cases totally erased from the mainstream. From political uproar to extreme violence, these movies pushed every boundary. Which one do you think went too far? Or maybe you believe in freedom of expression all the way. Let us know which movie shocked you the most in the comments below. And hey, if you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community of film lovers who crave the stories behind the screen. 1. The Last Temptation of Christ, 1988. Director Martin Scorsese. Starring Willem Dafoe as Jesus. When Martin Scorsese set out to make The Last Temptation of Christ, he wasn't just filming a movie. He was walking straight into one of the biggest religious firestorms in Hollywood history. Based on the novel by Nikos Kazantzakis, the film portrayed a deeply human version of Jesus, one who is tormented by doubt, fear, lust, and the desire to live an ordinary life. The most controversial moment? A dream sequence in which Jesus imagines marrying Mary Magdalene and living a secular life before ultimately returning to his destiny on the cross. Even before the film's release, protests erupted. Religious groups across America picketed Universal Studios, calling it blasphemous. Several theaters were threatened and vandalized. In fact, some cities outright refused to screen it. One Christian group offered to buy the film's negative just to destroy it. Despite the outrage, The Last Temptation of Christ wasn't pornography or hate speech. It was an exploration of faith, doubt, and sacrifice. But for many, just showing a vulnerable, conflicted Jesus was enough to get it banned. Today, it stands as one of the most controversial religious films ever made, and a powerful reminder of how dangerous it can be when cinema dares to challenge sacred ground. 2. Birth of a Nation, 1915. The film that divided a nation. In 1915, D.W. Griffith unveiled a film that would forever change cinema. And not always for the better. Birth of a Nation was groundbreaking in technique, introducing innovative storytelling methods like cross-cutting and epic battle sequences that pushed film into a new era. But behind its cinematic brilliance lurked a deeply disturbing narrative. Set during the Civil War and Reconstruction, the film portrayed African Americans, many played by white actors in blackface, as dangerous, immoral, and inferior. Even worse, it glorified the Ku Klux Klan, presenting them as heroes riding in to save the South from supposed chaos. The response was explosive. While some hailed it as a cinematic masterpiece, others, especially black communities and civil rights leaders like the NAACP, protested fiercely. Riots broke out near some theaters. Cities like Chicago, Denver, and Pittsburgh banned it outright. The film was even linked to a resurgence of the KKK, which used it as recruitment propaganda. Despite its ban in several areas, Birth of a Nation became one of the most commercially successful films of the silent era. Haunting proof that art, no matter how beautiful, can be used to justify hate. 3. Pink Flamingos, 1972. The outrageous legend of Pink Flamingos. In 1972, a film exploded onto the underground cinema scene that would forever change the meaning of shock value. Directed by John Waters and starring the drag icon Divine, Pink Flamingos was more than controversial. It was infamous. The film follows Divine, a criminal living in a trailer with her bizarre family, proudly claiming the title of filthiest person alive. But when a rival couple challenges her for the crown, the result is a grotesque, surreal war of one-upmanship. From crude humor to scenes many still refuse to describe, Pink Flamingos gleefully demolished every boundary of decency. When it screened, audiences either walked out in disgust or erupted in stunned laughter. Critics were horrified. Authorities in cities like Hicksville, Maryland, outright banned it. Even some independent theaters refused to touch it. But for many outsiders, rebels, and queer communities, Pink Flamingos became a bold symbol of resistance, an unapologetic middle finger to societal norms and censorship. Decades later, What was once banned and reviled is now preserved by the Library of Congress for its cultural significance. Because love it or loathe it, Pink Flamingos dared to be the filthiest film with something important to say. Freedom of expression has no rules. 4. Deep Throat 1972. The porn film that went mainstream. In the summer of 1972, a low-budget adult film premiered in a small New York City theater. No one expected it to become a cultural earthquake. But Deep Throat wasn't just another porn film. It became a mainstream phenomenon. Starring Linda Lovelace and directed by Gerard Damiano, the film featured a bizarre plotline. A woman whose clitoris is allegedly located in her throat. As ridiculous as it sounds, audiences flocked to see it. Lines wrapped around city blocks. Celebrities, socialites, even politicians were caught attending late-night screenings. The term porno chic was born. For the first time, adult cinema was part of the national conversation. But it didn't take long for the backlash to begin. Obscenity charges followed in dozens of cities. The FBI got involved. Theaters were raided. Copies of the film were seized. Deep Throat was banned in over 20 states and became the centerpiece of one of the most aggressive anti-pornography crackdowns in U.S. history. Behind the scenes, darker truths emerged. Star Linda Lovelace later claimed she was coerced into making the film, which added fuel to the fire of public outrage. Despite, or perhaps because of, the controversy, Deep Throat became one of the most profitable independent films ever made. And in a strange twist of history, the name would be immortalized again during the Watergate scandal, when the secret informant adopted the same code name. What started as a cheap adult film ended up shaking America's legal, political, and moral foundations. 5. The Tin Drum, 1979. The Tin Drum, 1979. The film the FBI came for. In 1979, the Tin Drum stormed onto the international film scene, winning the Palme d'Or at Cannes and an Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film. Adapted from Gunter Grass's novel, the film tells the surreal story of Oscar, a boy in Nazi Germany who refuses to grow up, literally, and expresses rebellion by beating his toy drum. But the celebration didn't last long in America. Years later, in 1997, something unprecedented happened in Oklahoma City. Police raided homes and seized VHS tapes of the Tin Drum from private citizens. Why? A controversial scene involving underage characters in sexual situations triggered an obscenity investigation. Though the film was decades old and globally acclaimed, U.S. authorities accused it of violating child pornography laws. The situation escalated quickly. The FBI got involved. Libraries pulled the film from shelves. Civil liberties groups fought back, citing artistic freedom. Eventually, the court ruled that the film did not violate any federal laws, and the bans were lifted. But for years, the Tin Drum remained a chilling reminder of how quickly art can become criminalized, even when it's history, literature, and cinema wrapped in one. 6. Caligula, 1979. The Roman orgy that shocked America. In 1979, cinema history was shaken by a film that blurred the line between art and pornography, Caligula. With a cast that included respected actors like Malcolm McDowell, Helen Mirren, and Peter O'Toole, audiences expected a dramatic historical epic about the infamous Roman emperor. What they got instead was a jaw-dropping descent into madness, excess, and unsimulated sex, all wrapped in golden Roman armor. Funded by Penthouse magazine founder Bob Guccione, the film was secretly spliced with explicit scenes after shooting wrapped, turning a serious script into an X-rated spectacle of orgies, torture, and imperial insanity. Critics were appalled. Censors were furious. And America? It recoiled. Caligula was outright banned in several U.S. states and only shown in heavily edited versions. Many theaters refused to screen it, while others drew in massive crowds eager to see what all the fuss was about. Despite the backlash, the film became a legend, not for its historical insight, but for exposing how power corrupts absolutely, especially when combined with unchecked eroticism. Even today, Caligula remains one of the most controversial films ever released, a monument to artistic ambition gone wild. 7. Henry. Portrait of a Serial Killer, 1986. the film that felt too real for comfort. When Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer quietly emerged in 1986, it didn't come with Hollywood glamour or over-the-top gore. Instead, it delivered a cold, emotionless look into the mind of a drifter who kills without remorse, based loosely on real-life murderer Henry Lee Lucas. The film was chilling not because of what it showed but how it showed it. Raw, silent, and disturbingly calm. Michael Rooker's haunting portrayal of Henry was so convincing, audiences began to question whether they were watching fiction or a snuff film. There was no music to cushion the horror. Just stark, clinical violence and unsettling stillness. The MPAA refused to give it an R rating, calling it too disturbing, regardless of edits. It was banned or delayed in numerous U.S. cities, remaining unrated for years. Unlike slasher flicks with flashy kills, Henry forced viewers to sit with the horror of realistic evil. It didn't sensationalize violence, it normalized it. And that perhaps was the most terrifying part. 8. Midnight Cowboy 1969. The X-rated Oscar winner America wasn't ready for. In the heart of late 1960s America, a time when cultural lines were drawn in stone, one film shattered expectations and the rules. Midnight Cowboy told the haunting story of Joe Buck, a naive Texan who moves to New York dreaming of becoming a male escort. But instead of glamour, he finds only loneliness, desperation, and an unlikely friendship with a sickly con man, Ratso Rizzo. The film was raw, unfiltered, and unapologetically real. It touched taboo subjects, homosexuality, prostitution, drug use, with an honesty no one had dared before. The MPAA slapped it with an X rating, the first and only time an X-rated film would go on to win Best Picture at the Academy Awards. But not everyone celebrated its boldness. In conservative towns across America, Midnight Cowboy was banned outright or heavily censored. Churches condemned it. Moral guardians declared it filth. And yet, audiences whispered about it, critics raved about it, and its stars Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman became legends. What began as a film too offensive to show in much of America became one of its most celebrated masterpieces. In the end, Midnight Cowboy didn't just challenge the rules, it rewrote them. 9. Kids 1995. The film that America tried to forget. When Kids hit theaters in 1995, it didn't just stir controversy, it ignited a firestorm. Directed by Larry Clark and written by a then 19-year-old Harmony Korine, the film pulled no punches. Set in the heart of 90s New York City, it followed a single day in the lives of urban teenagers, raw, reckless, and dangerously real. No stylized fiction. No sugarcoating. Just sex, drugs, skateboards, and the looming threat of HIV. Audiences were stunned. Critics called it a wake-up call and a disturbing mirror to youth culture. But others saw it as something far worse. An exploitative, borderline unwatchable film featuring underage actors in explicit situations. Some states and school districts banned screenings outright. Ratings boards refused to approve it. Major theater chains wouldn't touch it. It was eventually released without a rating, fueling the film's dark reputation. Despite the backlash, Kids became a cult classic, not because people loved it but because they couldn't look away. To this day, it's remembered not just as a movie, but as a cinematic punch to the American conscience. 10. Baise-moi 2000. The film too raw for American screens. When Baise-moi exploded onto the international scene in 2000, it wasn't just another indie film. It was a cinematic Molotov cocktail. Directed by Virginie Despentes and Coralie Trinity, this French film followed two young women, Manu and Nadine, who, after suffering brutal sexual violence, go on a vengeful hedonistic crime spree across France. But what made Baise-moi truly shocking wasn't just the violence or its feminist rage. It was the fact that the sex scenes were unsimulated and explicit. Real sex, real violence, real controversy. In the US, the film ran into immediate walls. Mainstream theaters refused to touch it. It was banned outright in several countries, and only shown in adult theaters under heavy restrictions in America. Critics were split. Some called it pornographic trash. Others hailed it as a raw, angry feminist statement against patriarchal violence. Despite or because of the band's Baise-moi became an underground legend, a symbol of the battle between free expression and censorship. In the end, Baise-moi wasn't just banned in America. It dared to show a side of womanhood, revenge, and trauma that few films had ever approached so unapologetically, and paid the price with censorship, protest, and notoriety. 11. The Prophet 2001. Silence by Power. In 2001, an independent filmmaker named Peter N. Alexander released a movie that he knew would shake the foundations of power, The Prophet. It told the fictional story of a man named L. Conrad Powers, the founder of a manipulative, controlling religion that preys on the vulnerable for money, obedience, and control. Though presented as a work of fiction, the resemblance to L. Ron Hubbard and the Church of Scientology was unmistakable. The film pulled no punches. It portrayed brainwashing, emotional abuse, and the inner workings of a cult-like organization obsessed with secrecy and profit. The Church of Scientology responded with immediate, aggressive legal action. Claiming the movie was a direct attack on their religion, they successfully pressured the courts into banning the film's release in the United States. To this day, The Prophet remains locked away, never officially distributed. It's one of the rare films to be effectively erased by legal force before the public could judge it. Those who've seen clips describe it as disturbing, bold, and damningly close to reality. In the end, The Prophet wasn't banned for nudity or violence. It was banned because it dared to tell a story too many powerful people didn't want heard. 12. Ken Park 2002. A film too raw for America. When Ken Park was quietly completed in 2002, even its own creators knew it wouldn't walk into theaters unchallenged. Directed by Larry Clark and written by Harmony Korine, the same minds behind Kids, this film dared to expose the chaos beneath the American suburban surface. The story follows a group of disillusioned teenagers navigating a world of neglect, abuse, and destructive sexuality. It opens with a chilling shock. The character Ken, smiling into the camera, suddenly takes his own life in a public skate park. What follows is even more unsettling. A raw, unsimulated exploration of adolescent confusion and the failures of adult responsibility. The explicit sex scenes, some involving minors though portrayed by adults, crossed every traditional line. Distributors feared legal action, and even major film festivals refused to screen it. In the United States, Ken Park was never given a theatrical release. No MPAA rating. No box office. Just silence. Larry Clark claimed censorship had silenced his vision. But critics were divided. Was it honest, or just shock for shock's sake? To this day, Ken Park remains banned in many regions and almost impossible to find legally in the U.S. It became an underground myth. A movie whispered about, downloaded illegally, and watched with unease. Some say Ken Park revealed a truth too disturbing for America to face. 13. The Interview 2014. 13. The Interview 2014. The movie that sparked a global cyber war. In 2014, The Interview was supposed to be just another outrageous Seth Rogen-James Franco comedy, until it accidentally ignited an international crisis. The film followed two bumbling journalists recruited by the CIA to assassinate North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. It was bold, offensive, and played for laughs, but the North Korean regime wasn't laughing. Just weeks before the film's release, Sony Pictures was hacked by a group calling itself Guardians of Peace. Confidential emails, scripts, and employee data were leaked online in a massive cyber attack that U.S. intelligence would later trace back to North Korea. Then came the threats. If The Interview was released, 9/11 style attacks would target American theaters. Major cinema chains pulled out. Sony canceled the premiere. The film was effectively banned from theatrical release in the U.S., not by government order but by fear. The backlash was swift. Hollywood cried censorship. President Obama publicly criticized Sony's decision. Under public pressure, The Interview was eventually released, online and in select independent theaters, on Christmas Day. Though a comedy, The Interview made history as the only film to trigger a state-sponsored cyber attack and alter how Hollywood approaches political satire. It's not just controversial. It's a chilling reminder of the power of media on the world stage. 14. In the Realm of the Senses, 1976. 14. In the Realm of the Senses, 1976. The film Too Real for America. Set in 1930s Japan, In the Realm of the Senses dared to blend art house filmmaking with raw, unsimulated eroticism, a boundary so provocative, it shook even the most liberal cinematic circles. Directed by Nagisa Oshima, the film chronicled the obsessive real-life love affair between a hotel maid and her employer, one that spiraled into dangerous passion and ultimately, deadly desire. But what truly ignited the firestorm was its explicit, real sex scenes. Not simulated, not implied, but boldly captured in unflinching detail. For censors, it was pornography disguised as art. For others, it was a fearless exploration of intimacy, obsession, and control. When the film attempted to cross into the U.S., customs officials seized it at the border. Even in Japan, the original negatives had to be smuggled to France for post-production to avoid prosecution under obscenity laws. American audiences were stunned. Some theaters refused to screen it. Others were raided. Critics were divided. Was it filth or fearless filmmaking? To this day, In the Realm of the Senses remains a lightning rod in censorship debates. Banned outright in several U.S. cities and edited elsewhere, its legacy is one of audacity, a film that refused to compromise, no matter the cost. 15. Sweetback's Baise-moi song, 1971. The film that Hollywood tried to ignore, but the streets made a legend. In 1971, Melvin Van Peebles shocked the world with Sweetback's Baise-moi song, a raw, unfiltered portrait of a black man on the run from a racist system. Written, directed, produced, scored by, and starring Van Peebles himself, the film wasn't just a movie, it was a revolution. The plot was simple. Sweetback, a black male sex performer, witnesses police brutality and kills two white cops in defense of a black youth. What follows is an unrelenting chase through the underbelly of America. Gritty, unapologetic, and deeply political. Hollywood wanted no part of it. The film was labeled X-rated not for graphic violence or sex alone, but because of its political content. Its very existence challenged the white-controlled studio system. Theaters refused to screen it. Critics called it dangerous. It was banned or restricted in several cities, especially in the South. But Van Peebles didn't back down. He took it directly to black communities, showing it in churches, barbershops, and underground venues. Word of mouth exploded. The people saw their own rage, strength, and rebellion reflected on screen for the first time. Sweetback's Baise-moi song made over $10 million on a $150,000 budget, becoming one of the most successful independent films of its time. It birthed the blaxploitation movement, inspired future filmmakers like Spike Lee and John Singleton, and proved that black stories could shake the foundation of American cinema. The system tried to silence Van Peebles, but Sweetback ran so others could run further. 16. Shortbus, 2006. A celebration too raw for America? When director John Cameron Mitchell released Shortbus in 2006, he didn't just want to tell a story. He wanted to smash boundaries. Set in a surreal post-9/11 New York City, the film followed a group of emotionally wounded characters exploring love, intimacy, and connection. But what truly set it apart and made it infamous was its unsimulated sex scenes between real actors, gay and straight, filmed without body doubles or cuts. Mitchell wasn't trying to provoke just for shock value. He called it a quest for healing, portraying how art and sexuality intersect in a lonely world. But the U.S. wasn't ready. Many theaters refused to screen it, labeling it pornographic. Religious and conservative groups protested. Even some independent cinemas backed off under public pressure. Though Shortbus technically wasn't banned nationwide, its limited release and harsh censorship in various regions practically made it invisible to the mainstream. Still, the film found a cult audience, viewers who saw it not as vulgarity, but as raw, vulnerable human storytelling. Shortbus was never meant to be easy to watch. It was meant to be honest, and in some corners of America, honesty was just too controversial. 17. The Panic in Needle Park, 1971. Banned for its brutal realism. And it wasn't even fiction. When The Panic in Needle Park hit theaters in 1971, audiences weren't prepared. Starring a young Al Pacino in his breakout role, the film offered a chilling, unfiltered look at heroin addiction in New York City's Upper West Side, a real-life location nicknamed Needle Park for its constant drug activity. Unlike most Hollywood portrayals of addiction, this wasn't romanticized or censored. It was raw. The film featured actual drug use, dirty needles, and withdrawal scenes so visceral they felt like a documentary. There was no musical score to soften the blow, just the cold, echoing silence of addiction destroying lives. The realism was so disturbing, several U.S. cities either banned the film or refused to screen it. Some theaters pulled it due to public pressure. And though it earned critical acclaim for its honesty, the film was too much for many, an unflinching mirror to a drug epidemic America didn't want to face. Yet despite the bans, The Panic in Needle Park became a cult classic and a haunting reminder of cinema's power to show truth, even when it hurts. And that wraps up our deep dive into 17 controversial movies that were banned in America. From shocking storylines to bold social commentary, these films pushed the limits, and some paid the price with a ban. Now it's your turn. Which of these movies do you think went too far? And which ones deserved better? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're reading them all. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and share it with your fellow movie lovers. And if you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss our latest videos on film, controversy, and classic Hollywood legends. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious, stay cinematic.